Hello and welcome back to Green Money Momentum, where we talk about market movements, making money, and money momentum. I'm your host, Trevor, and we are here for yet another daily talk of stock. And we are back today. It is a Monday, June 16th, and you can see by the heat map a very green day overall. And so a lot of the articles are talking about this here, and that is that tension, at least in the short term, has dropped a little bit. Iran saying that it wants to end hostilities with Israel. And so the markets did have a pump from this, but I think it's a lot more than just this news here. I think what the markets are really anticipating is this Wednesday with the FOMC meeting and Jerome Powell. But before we get to that, going on this news right here, I believe personally that wars are a very long process. And I think after Iran getting bombed like it did and all the horrible events that have happened, I don't think that we're going to see this necessarily end anytime soon. Of course, I wish the best. I don't wish for war anywhere, and I don't wish for anybody to suffer. So very sad when it comes to that. But the market's having small knee-jerk reactions in the short term. So the markets had a little knee-jerk reaction towards the downside when the bombing initially happened, and then now that tensions are slightly getting better, so they say, the markets are having a knee-jerk reaction back. But either way, none of the fundamentals have really changed. Oil did go up and right back down, but I believe personally that's what's going to really shake up the markets this week is going to be on Wednesday, and that is going to be all around the FOMC meeting, Jerome Powell, and the Fed's rate cut decision. Most likely there will be a continued pause on the rate cuts, so there is not going to be a rate increase or a rate cut as expected. So going to stay where it's at, and personally I believe that that is why the markets are pushing up right now. And when we get to Wednesday, it's going to be an interesting spot to be at, because on Wednesday there could be a lot of volatility. We know the long ongoing jokes with Jerome Powell, and when he comes out and says good afternoon, that's when you'll see a lot of stocks and ETFs and just the overall market drop. So that could happen, but come Wednesday, remember the green pumps that we are seeing today. I believe there will be continued green tomorrow, and then it's going to be interesting to see where Wednesday's at. So if you do feel over leveraged in the markets, maybe take this opportunity today and tomorrow. If we continue to see green, take this as an opportunity to possibly take profits or just deleverage a little bit down. Put your stop losses on there. Now, the thing is, Jerome Powell is going to be speaking at the end of the day on Wednesday. So remember, with stop losses, they do hit during the normal trading hours, but not typically in the after hours. So it's something to just be aware of, but just have yourself leveraged at a position you feel comfortable. I'm not saying that on Wednesday there is going to be a drop, but as investors, we need to always prepare for anything. But I do believe that the markets will stay green at least until Wednesday. And with that being said, we're going to talk about three different plays that were, two of them were green today. One of them was red, but the first one is a favorite on this channel, and that is that big guy back there, Mr. Big Bear. We're then going to hop into QUBT, quantum computing, a big day in that stock, and then we're going to finish with the stock DJT. So we're going to get into all of that. Before I do, as always, this is not financial advice, and I always recommend doing your own due diligence before making any financial decisions. But overall, when we look at the major indexes, we can see that both the triple Qs and the SPY are on the continued recovery that they have been on. So despite all the news that we have seen recently, first with the bad news around Moody's credit rating drop, just a couple weeks ago, and then the recent news of the war and all the fear, uncertainty, and doubt around the big beautiful bill, we continue to see recovery. And I believe that the strength in this recovery will continue, and I believe that the markets will stay green going up for the long term, because despite looking a bit overvalued, when we look at the relative strength index and also on the MACD, the markets are shaking off what could be perceived as bad news. So the markets really are going off of of the fundamentals of the tariffs, the interest rates, and then also inflation. Those are the main movers around the market. And right now, the tariff concerns have cooled off a bit, as well as inflation. We know the CPI numbers weren't bad last week. And so now the next leg is going to be interest rates, where I believe that we will see a pause and we will just continue on the trend that we have been on. And so with that being said, we're going to hop into our first stock here, BigBearAi. And overall, Big Bear did have a nice day in the markets. We could see that we went up 9%. We went up by 36 cents. Currently, the stock trading at $4.08. So a big day for the Big Bear, returning back to the $4 mark. And when we just look at the short term, we could see that we have been in this sideways trading channel in the Big Bear. And so we were previously in this upwards trend. We have went a bit sideways, and currently we are trading in this sideways channel, with the highest level of resistance in this channel being right around $4.50. So right now, Big Bear did just break past a major level of support and resistance at the $4 mark. And what we want to see is Big Bear get past where it was rejected today, around $4.15. If it could get past $4.15 to $4.30 and $4.50, $4.50 being the highest level of rejection that we have seen in the short term. And when we look at the other indicators, we are looking positive on the relative strength index and also on the MACD. So it does appear that we still have a lot of room to run up in the Big Bear, and investors have been holding strong, because with Big Bear, there was a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt in the short term not long ago, especially around all the lawsuits. And so the Big Bear has gained a lot of momentum since the bottom when it was right under $3. So Big Bear, investors holding strong. And what's very interesting about Big Bear and the sector that it is in, of course, it has a lot to do with AI technologies, face scan, everything like that, but they're working alongside the United States government, and a lot of what Big Bear provides is technology. And right now, there is still a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, despite all the articles saying that things are getting better. We know with tensions between countries and with wars, things don't typically just end in a day or two. Again, having your place bombed is pretty severe, and so I do believe that the war will unfortunately continue at least for some time. And with that being said, defense stocks are a good place to put your money in. And with that being said, Big Bear is one of those defense companies that still has a lot of opportunity to run to the upside. And with Big Bear, the next big event that we have coming up will be their earnings. So their earnings will come at the end of next month or at the beginning of August. And overall, this should be a big earnings report, because we do know earlier in the year and last year, Big Bear did gain some big contracts that have yet to show up in the earnings reports yet. So there may be some of those earnings showing up in the next report. So big anticipation for that. And of course, when we look at the history of Big Bear, they have had some good quarters when it comes to revenue, but one of their negative spots is their debt. So they are at a negative earnings per share and a negative price to earnings ratio. But in the last quarter, they did pay off a significant amount of debt. So hopefully in the next quarter, we continue to see progress there, and we continue to see the stock price run up in anticipation for that earnings. So overall, Big Bear in a good position, a growing company, and they are a front runner when it comes to defense, with their CEO having ties back to the United States government and the current president. So a very interesting stock right there. And so with that being said, now we're going to hop into our next stock, which is around quantum computing. This stock's name is Quantum Computing, QUBT. And QUBT had a big day today, up another 25%. So right back to $20. This stock has been gaining a lot of hype and momentum when it comes to the price recently. We did see this stock run up to 20 the other day. It did have a big retraction at the end of last week, went right back to 16, but did have another big pop today, all the way up to $20. And so these markings are actually from my last video. So bounced right off of that bottom, gained a lot of momentum. And so now, just to get back to the 52-week high, it will be a 22% upside. And so QUBT investors, very excited because overall the quantum sector showing a lot of momentum in it. Quantum going to be a big part of our lives coming up. Those computers are very valuable, very powerful, and have a lot of value to add to companies. There's many talks about quantum computers being right next to classical computers and being able to solve a lot of big world issues. And so QUBT, one of those companies that is still in a bit of research and development, but making some big steps. And they're actually going to have a place of business out here in Tempe, Arizona, right where I am located at. And that gets me very excited because just when we talk about innovation, Tempe, Arizona is a front runner when it comes to innovation. So QUBT being right there, just from what I see where I live with my own eyes, this puts them as a front runner when it comes to technology in the future. Tempe, Arizona, we have self-driving cars, we have food delivery robots, and we're getting quantum computers as well. So in their first quarter for 2025, they did have a positive earnings report. So they did report that their net income was up. They did have a major turnaround, as it says. So they actually did come in at a positive at 13 cents per share, or 17 million, opposed to previously a net loss of 6.4 million in quarter one. So a big jump there with their last earnings report. And we could also see here with their cash equivalents, they jumped by 87 million to 166 million. So overall, their balance sheet looking great. And what's also positive about QUBT is they're soon going to be joining into the Russell 2000 and the Russell 3000. So in some anticipation for that move coming up. And right now, a lot of QUBT investors, but soon we're also going to have a lot of index investors as well, because if you're going to be investing into the Russell 2000 or 3000, you're also going to be investing into this quantum computing stock. And so myself, I am very bullish on the entire quantum computing sector, and what I am invested into when it comes to quantum computing is QUBT and QBTS, both quantum computing stocks, both quantum computing companies, but they focus on different type of quantum computers. So QUBT does what is considered gate model quantum computing, and then QBTS does annealing, and both do have differences, both very interesting, and both provide a lot of intrinsic value. Annealing is a little bit ahead of gate model, but both do have a lot of value. So I definitely urge looking up some about quantum computing, maybe just Googling or chat GPTing that question, annealing versus gate model, and you'll learn a lot just from that. And it will give you some clarity about the quantum computing sector, because overall quantum computing is one of the sectors I am very excited about and most bullish on because of everything behind quantum. And this is one of those tech sectors that has a lot of opportunity for growth. We know with tech, it's always a front runner. Just in the last years, we have had big companies like NVIDIA have major rises. So with their chips and everything they have, I believe that quantum computing is right alongside that. And so right alongside that is cryptocurrency as another big tech play. And this company right here, DJT, Trump Media and Technology, is doing a lot of investment when it comes to cryptocurrency. And so we're going to talk about that here in a second. But first, just visiting on the technicals, you could see these two lines I have drawn out here. This is just to show the major support and the major support over the last year in DJT. So over the last year, this stock has been high flying up in the 40s, 50s, but each time it did have a retraction and then did bounce off the major levels right around $21. Currently, we're underneath that spot. And when we look at the other indicators of the relative strength index and the MACD with the candlestick chart as well, we are looking a bit oversold in this play. And so with DJT, what is hurting the stock in the short term, we did have a bit of a drop today, is there is some fear, uncertainty, and doubt around this decision here. And that is that Trump Media is going to be funding a Bitcoin reserve through share purchases. And so there is going to be some dilution around the shares of DJT. The shares are going to be increased. I believe the offering is right around 80 million. And so with that being said, there is some short-term fear, uncertainty, and doubt around DJT and that fear of dilution. But myself, I am not worried about that because currently there aren't too many shares outstanding at 277 million. Adding just about 80 million shares should put us at a little bit higher of a float with shares, but it's not crazy considering some companies have billions and even trillions of shares. So DJT still has a reasonable amount of shares, and with this purchase, they are going to be purchasing 2.5 billion in Bitcoin. This is going to be a massive purchase. This is going to put Bitcoin on their reserve, and a lot of companies are following alongside this strategy. So it was made famous first by Michael Saylor of MicroStrategy. Now we have seen other companies adopt that, the most famous now being DJT, and GME recently mentioned them doing this as well. But with GME, there is a lot more dilution within that stock. While DJT, there is going to be some dilution, but not as much as many GameStop investors have felt through this time. So with DJT, I am very bullish on what they are doing. They also have a lot of crypto ETFs. And overall, I do believe that we are pushing more into the mass adoption into cryptocurrency. The president being one of the biggest salesmen around Bitcoin and all of crypto, and Bitcoin specifically, not the other cryptocurrencies, but Bitcoin specifically is a very interesting play because what makes Bitcoin so valuable and what many Bitcoiners are very behind is the fact that with Bitcoin, there is a hard cap set to be at around 21 million. That's the max amount of shares that could ever be created for Bitcoin, or I should say not shares, but Bitcoin. That's the max amount of Bitcoins there will ever be, 21 million. We are still getting mined up to that point, but unlike all these other fiat currencies that could be printed to oblivion, Bitcoin is set to have that hard cap. And so these companies taking advantage of where Bitcoin is a very interesting topic of discussion. And I think this is a very good opportunity to get into these plays that are taking advantage of Bitcoin, because currently Bitcoin sits at 100,000. Let's take a look at the exact price of Bitcoin right now at 108,000. So right around all-time highs. And with the thoughts of Bitcoin only becoming more scarce in value over time, now is a better opportunity to get into Bitcoin than later in the future, because the scarcity is only going to continue, as well as the fear of missing out. And so positioning yourself into DJT at these lows, it's a very good opportunity, especially because the company of DJT is still a fairly new company overall. When we look at them on the with their earnings report, we could see that they have only had one earnings report above $1 million. And so adding Bitcoin to their balance sheet is going to greatly switch things up. And talking about their earnings, they do have their next big earnings in 11 days. This is going to be for Q4 of 2024. So a possible catalyst there, maybe a short-term catalyst from something we may see from this earnings report. But the long-term catalyst on DJT is the mass adoption into cryptocurrency and how this company is taking advantage of it. So myself, I am very bullish on DJT, as well as QUBT, quantum computing, and of course, BigBearAI. A lot of momentum in the first two stocks of Big Bear and quantum computing. Hopefully, we could continue that momentum tomorrow. It's going to be interesting to see if we continue to see a push in the Big Bear and to see where quantum computing stock gets to tomorrow, to see if we could get to the 52-week high that was set not long ago. And with DJT, I believe things could stay slow for a little bit, but it is during these opportunities while the stock is low that personally I am either going to add more to my shares. I initially set my shares in DJT right before the presidency of Trump started, but I may add more shares. But what I'm more likely to do is purchase some options contracts while the stock is low and while everything is low, in anticipation for the rebound that I foresee in the near future. But I would be curious to hear what everyone else thinks about these stocks and the overall stock market in the comment section below. So please drop a comment, please leave a like, and please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. I thank you all so much for being here, and I will see you in the next daily talk of stock.